For half a century, the legend of Silas Dusty Croft was just a ghost story whispered in dusty Arizona taverns. The old prospector who chased a mythical gold mine into the desert and was swallowed by the sun. For his great-grandson, Owen, it was a tale of family failure. But when a group of hikers stumbles upon a brittle scroll pinned to a cactus near Silas's last known camp, the old ghost story suddenly feels terrifyingly real. The map inside doesn't point to gold, but to something far stranger, bearing a chilling inscription. Not gold, but something else. This story is a deep dive into how a family mystery can echo through generations. As we follow Owen's journey, think about the secrets your own family might hold, and let me know in the comments how you think you'd react if a piece of that history suddenly appeared. Owen Croft adjusted the stack of student essays on his desk, the red pen in his hand feeling heavier than usual. Outside his classroom window, the manicured lawns of the Phoenix suburb shimmered under the afternoon heat. It was a world of order and predictability, a world a million miles away from the jagged peaks of the Superstition Mountains that loomed on the horizon. Those mountains were a part of his family's story, a story of chaos and disappearance that had defined the Croft name for 50 years. His great-grandfather, Silas, had walked into those mountains in 1975 with a mule and a dream of finding the lost Coyote's Tooth gold mine, and had never walked out. The story became a cautionary tale, a brand of failure passed down through his grandfather and his own father. The Crofts were dreamers who chased ghosts and came back with empty hands. Owen had chosen to be different. He chose history books over treasure maps, a steady paycheck over the lure of a fool's errand. His phone buzzed, vibrating against a half-corrected essay on the Gadsden Purchase. It was an unknown number with a local area code. He almost ignored it, but a flicker of curiosity made him answer. The voice on the other end was professional, belonging to a Deputy Miller from the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. "Mr. Owen Croft?" she asked. "We're calling in reference to a Silas Croft. We believe he was your great-grandfather." Owen's grip tightened on the phone. "Yes, that's right. He disappeared a long time ago. Has something been found?" The deputy paused. "Potentially. A couple of hikers were off trail near Weaver's Needle yesterday. They found something they thought we should see. It's a hand-drawn map, protected in an old leather scroll. It was pinned to a prickly pear cactus. Silas Croft's name is on it." Owen felt a strange chill despite the warmth of the classroom. A map. After all this time. "We looked him up in the old missing persons files, and your grandfather was listed as next of kin. That led us to you," Deputy Miller continued. "We'd like you to come in and see if you can identify it. There's something written on the cactus itself, too. It says, 'Not gold, but something else.'" The drive to the sheriff's station felt unreal. Owen's mind raced, replaying every story his grandfather had told him about Silas. He was a stubborn, quiet man who knew the desert better than his own home. He wasn't reckless. The idea that he'd just gotten lost never sat right with the family. When Owen arrived, Deputy Miller, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, led him to a small room. On a metal table laid out on a piece of evidence cloth was the scroll. It was old, the leather cracked and faded, but the string holding it together was still intact. Beside it was a photograph of the cactus, showing the scroll impaled on its spines and the crude, carved words beneath it. Owen recognized the handwriting instantly from old letters his grandfather had saved. It was his. "That's his writing," Owen said, his voice barely a whisper. "The way he makes his S is unmistakable." Deputy Miller nodded, carefully unrolling the brittle parchment. The map was drawn in faded ink, a web of lines and symbols that meant nothing to a casual observer. It wasn't a map of mining claims or known trails. It was a map of landmarks only a true desert dweller would recognize, a rock formation shaped like a lizard's head, a trio of unusually tall saguaros, a dry creek bed that split in two. "Does any of this look familiar?" she asked. Owen shook his head. "No, but this is what he was looking for." He pointed to a small, crudely drawn symbol of a jagged tooth near the map's center, the Coyote's Tooth. It's a myth, a lost mine supposedly richer than the lost Dutchman. Deputy Miller looked at him with a practiced, neutral expression. "And what do you make of the message? Not gold, but something else." Owen stared at the photograph. I have no idea, but if he left this, he left it for a reason. He wanted it to be found. Leaving the station, Owen felt a shift inside him. The family ghost story had just become a real, tangible mystery. The shame and sense of failure he'd always associated with Silas was replaced by a burning need for answers. He spent the next week consumed by the map. He took a leave of absence from his teaching job, something his practical, cautious self would never have considered just days before. He photocopied the map and pinned it to the wall of his garage, turning the space into a makeshift investigation hub. He cross-referenced the strange landmarks with old geological surveys and topographical charts from the 1970s. The Lizard's Head Rock was the first breakthrough. He found a mention of it in an old hiker's journal from the era, locating it in a remote, rugged canyon deep within the superstitions. With that one anchor point, the rest of the map began to make a terrifying kind of sense. It wasn't a direct route, but a winding, secretive path that seemed designed to avoid the main trails, a path for someone who didn't want to be followed. His goal was no longer just to understand, it was to follow. He was going to walk the path Silas had drawn. He spent days gathering the right gear, modern GPS with the old maps uploaded, water purification systems, emergency beacons, all the things his great-grandfather never had. His friends thought he was crazy. "You're a history teacher, Owen, not an outdoorsman," his friend Mark told him over the phone. "The superstitions are no joke. People die out there every year." "I know," Owen replied, stuffing a first aid kit into his pack. "But he wasn't just people. He was my family. I have to know what happened to him." His journey began at a dusty trailhead, the same one Silas had likely used 50 years prior. The first 2 days were grueling. The desert was unforgiving, a silent, beautiful killer. He navigated by the sun and his GPS, matching the contours of the land to the faded lines on Silas's map. He found the Lizard's Head Rock on the third day, the resemblance uncanny. A jolt of connection shot through him. He was on the right path. He was seeing what Silas had seen. The map then led him away from the canyon and up a steep rocky ridge. It was here, while resting under the shade of a Palo Verde tree, that he met the first person he'd seen in days. An old man, his face a road map of wrinkles, was sitting on a rock nearby, calmly watching him. He introduced himself as Elias, a rockhound who had been exploring these mountains for 60 years. "You're a long way from the tourist trails, son," Elias said, his voice raspy. "Chasing the Dutchman's gold, are you?" Owen hesitated, then decided to be honest. He showed the old man the copy of the map. "I'm chasing a family story. My great-grandfather drew this." His name was Silas Croft. Elias's eyes widened slightly. "Silas. ILB. I remember him. A quiet man, kept to himself. Saw him at the trailhead back in '75. He was heading in this direction. Never saw him again." Elias studied the map, his finger tracing the lines. "This path he's drawn, it's strange. It leads toward an area we all used to call the Silent Valley. Back in the '70s, there was a group of people living out there, off-the-grid types, called themselves the Children of the Sun." A knot formed in Owen's stomach. "A commune?" Elias nodded. "That's right. They were real private. Didn't take kindly to outsiders. Most folks around here gave them a wide berth. They believed the mountains provided all they needed. Some said they were peaceful. Others said they were hiding something." Elias pointed to a spot on the map. "Right here where your great-grandfather drew that coyote tooth. That's smack in the middle of where their settlement was. There's no gold mine there, son. Just bad memories." The revelation changed everything. Silas wasn't just lost in the wilderness. He had been walking directly toward an isolated, secretive community. The phrase, "not gold but something else," took on a darker meaning. Owen thanked Elias, his mind reeling. The old rockhound gave him a final piece of advice. "You be careful in that valley. The people are long gone, but the mountains remember." As Owen continued, the terrain grew more difficult, the path on the map leading him through narrow slot canyons and over treacherous scree slopes. It was a route meant to conceal, to protect. Finally, after 5 days of hiking, he stood on a ridge overlooking a wide, hidden valley, just as Elias had described. In the center of it, almost invisible against the desert floor, were the faint outlines of structures. He had found it. The Silent Valley. He descended into the valley as the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows. The settlement was a ghost town. The small, adobe-style buildings were crumbling. Their roofs caved in. A larger circular structure stood in the center, likely a communal meeting hall. It was utterly silent, save for the whisper of the wind through the decaying walls. Owen walked through the ruins, a feeling of deep unease settling over him. This was where his great-grandfather's trail had led. He explored the main hall first. Inside, faded tapestries with sun symbols hung on the walls and broken pottery littered the floor. There was no sign of violence, just abandonment. It felt as if one day, everyone had simply vanished. As darkness fell, he set up his small tent near the edge of the ruins. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. That night he pored over the map again under the light of his headlamp. What was the something else Silas had found here? What was worth creating this cryptic map and leaving it behind? The next morning he began a systematic search of the area. He reasoned that if Silas had found something important enough to hide a map for, it must be something physical. He searched the buildings one by one, finding nothing but dust and decay. He spent the entire day searching, his hope beginning to fade. Maybe Elias was wrong. Maybe Silas had just passed through here and gotten lost further on. But the map ended here, with the symbol of the coyote tooth. It had to mean something. As the second day in the valley drew to a close, he decided to investigate one last area, a small, separate cluster of rocks, a few hundred yards from the main settlement, a place that didn't seem to have any strategic purpose. It was there, behind a large boulder, that he found it. A single shallow grave, marked only by a small pile of stones. It was clearly not part of the commune's main burial ground, which he'd located earlier. This grave was hidden. With a deep sense of dread, Owen used his small trowel to carefully move the stones and dig into the hard-packed earth. Just a few inches down, his trowel struck something metal. He cleared the dirt away with his hands and uncovered a small, rusted tin box. His heart pounded in his chest as he pried it open. Inside, nestled on a bed of rotted cloth, was a single object, an old silver U.S. Marshal's badge, and beneath it a small, leather-bound journal. He opened the journal. The first page read, "My name is Silas Croft. If you're reading this, I was killed by the people in this valley. They are not peaceful farmers. They are fugitives, and their leader is a wanted man named Cain. The man he killed was a federal officer. The badge in this box was his." Owen stared at the words, the 50-year-old mystery crashing down on him with brutal clarity. His great-grandfather hadn't been searching for gold. He had stumbled upon a murder, and he had left behind the evidence. The something else was the truth. Suddenly a voice cut through the silence, sharp and hostile. "You shouldn't be here." Owen spun around, his headlamp catching the figure of a man standing at the edge of the clearing. He was old, perhaps in his late 70s, with a gaunt face and eyes that burned with a cold fire. He held an old hunting rifle, and it was aimed directly at Owen's chest. "That box doesn't belong to you," the man said, taking a slow step forward. Owen recognized him from a faded photograph he'd seen in the journal, a picture of the commune's members. It was Cain, the leader. He hadn't vanished with the others. He had stayed. He had become the mountain's ghost, guarding its secret. "Silas Croft sent you, didn't he?" Cain rasped, his voice a dry crackle. "Even from the grave, he won't leave us be." Owen slowly raised his hands, the journal and badge still clutched in one of them. He knew in that moment that this was not just about the past. He had walked into a trap that had been set for 50 years, and the man who had killed his great-grandfather was now deciding whether to kill him too. "Silas is dead," Owen said, trying to keep his voice steady. "He died a long time ago. I'm his great-grandson. I just wanted to know what happened to him." Cain let out a bitter laugh. "He happened to us. A nosy old fool who couldn't mind his own business. He stumbled onto our sanctuary, saw something he shouldn't have. Kane's eyes flickered to the tin box in Owen's hand. We were building a new world here, away from the poison of your society. But that marshal came snooping, asking questions. He got what he deserved. And your great-grandfather played the hero. He saw me bury the body. He thought he could get away, leave his little clues. The old man's finger tightened on the trigger. We couldn't let him go. We couldn't let him ruin what we had built. We took his map, but he must have made another one. Owen's mind raced. He had an emergency beacon in his pack, but reaching for it would be suicide. His only weapon was the truth. It's over, Kane, Owen said, his voice gaining strength. The rest of them left. You're all alone out here, guarding a pile of rocks and a 50-year-old crime. For what? For peace, Kane roared, his voice echoing in the silent valley. This place was pure. We were free. He would have brought the world down on us. Just as Kane took another step forward, a sound split the air. Not a gunshot, but the distinct whir of a helicopter. Owen had activated his beacon when he first entered the valley, a standard safety protocol he'd set to transmit his location if he didn't check in. He had forgotten all about it. Red and blue lights flashed across the canyon walls. Kane looked up, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. He had been so isolated for so long, he hadn't even considered modern technology. He hesitated for just a second, torn between the man in front of him and the approaching authorities. That second was all Owen needed. He lunged, not at Kane, but to the side, scrambling behind the large boulder as the rifle fired, the shot splintering rock where he had just been standing. The helicopter was overhead now, a spotlight flooding the clearing. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "This is the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. Drop your weapon." Cornered and defeated, Kane let the rifle clatter to the ground, a lifetime of secrets ending in the harsh glare of a spotlight. The epilogue was written in the quiet, sterile rooms of the sheriff's department. With the journal, the badge, and Kane's confession, the full story came out. The Children of the Sun had been a group of fugitives led by a man wanted for the murder of a U.S. Marshal in another state. They had created their sanctuary in the superstitions to hide. Silas had, by sheer bad luck, stumbled upon them just after they had killed a second marshal who had tracked them there. He had witnessed the burial and tried to escape to alert the authorities, leaving the cryptic map behind as a failsafe. He was caught and killed before he could make it out. After the murder, the commune, fearing discovery, disbanded and scattered across the country, leaving only Kane behind, a self-appointed guardian of their crime. A few weeks later, Owen led a small group of officials back to the valley to recover the remains of two men, the marshal and his great-grandfather, Silas Croft. They gave Silas a proper burial in the family plot, his headstone finally marking an end to the story. The name Croft was no longer a synonym for failure. It was a name tied to a quiet, stubborn man who, in the face of evil, had tried to do the right thing. Owen returned to his classroom, but he was different. He looked at the mountains on the horizon not as a symbol of his family's curse, but as a place of quiet sacrifice. He hadn't found gold, just as the map promised. He had found something far more valuable, the truth, and in doing so, he had finally brought his great-grandfather home. What would you do if you discovered a dark secret about a long-lost relative? Would you pursue the truth, even if it put you in danger, or would you let the past remain buried? Let us know your thoughts below. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and joining our community. We believe every story deserves to be told, and by joining us, you help bring more of them to light.